So this is to be the second video in a series on writing, and not even writing well, but just a writing workshop of sorts to maybe help you get started with a bit less stress. And so in this session, I'm going to try to keep it to 10 minutes, but we've got a lot to cover in 10 minutes. So forgive me if I go quickly, and always please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. So in the first session, we talked a little bit about getting organized and getting started. And now, hopefully, now that we have a project and we know what the graded items are for that project, we need to get going. And so the first step is always, or almost always at least, it's going to be topic selection. We've got to figure out what to talk about, right? And so topic selection, and your instructors, be it an English instructor for an essay or a research paper or whatever it is, your instructors want you to narrow your focus. We say this hundreds and hundreds of times to students: narrow the focus of your topic. And if you will do this, it actually makes your job as a student easier if you will narrow the focus of your topic. Too often, I see students say, I want to write an essay. I'm going to write a 3-page essay on bicycles. Well, bicycles is a huge topic. What about bicycles? Are you going to talk about tires or frames or components or exercise or fitness, nutrition? Bicycles is way too big to put into 3 pages. You need to find something specific about bicycles that you can talk about and cover well in 3 pages. Remember, on the length of the paper, it really needs to be long enough to cover the topic. And you can't cover bicycles in 3 pages. We can talk about some tiny piece of bicycles in 3 pages. So we might say on our topic, we might say, instead of just bicycles, we might say something like the impact of bike riding on the economy, or even better, the impact of bike riding on the economy in college towns. And so that's something that's very specific, and I can probably dig up some research on that and talk about it and cover it probably pretty well in about 3 pages. So on topic selection, we always want to narrow our focus. And you'll forgive my crude note-taking here in Microsoft Word, but we're going to use Word a little bit later on. So now that we have a topic selected, and we'll stick with our bicycle example because that's something that I know a little bit about maybe. We need an outline, and not an outline like you're thinking, like you maybe learned to do outlines in English class. Don't do an outline with the Roman numerals and the indents and the different numbers and all of this, and that's I mean that is a real outline, but it's not actually useful for what you're trying to do. Now, sometimes your English instructor, or I shouldn't pick on English instructors, but sometimes your teacher will ask you for a formal outline for the paper. In that case, you do need to do the Roman numerals and all of that stuff. But for our organizational purposes, we really just need a list of things to do. So our paper here, we've got our topic, but we need an outline, and I really should just call this not an outline, but a list of sections. We need a list of sections. And so let me go over here, and the very first thing I'm going to do in my paper is just make a list of sections. So my format calls for a title page, so I know I got to do that, and I know I need a list of references at the end, right? So I know I need references and a title page, and generally we will have an introduction of some sort. We'll have an introduction, and then our main body, and then some type of closing or conclusion or something like that. Depending on the paper, sometimes you can get away with a section on further research. Do this if you need to stretch your paper by a page or two. This works sometimes, and what you do is you say, here are the things that I discovered in my paper, but while I was researching, I found all these other questions that I would love to talk about, and so this is my future. More research is needed in this area, and so that's not always appropriate, but it is it is kind of an extra step. But don't fill this with fluff. It needs to be real information. And so here are the sections of our basic paper. Depending on the format and the course and the project, you may or may not need a title page, but you will always need at least these three sections here: your introduction, a body, and a closing. And so sometimes if you're doing your outline or your list here, you may move these things around, but generally these are a logical order, and things go in this way. So in our body, we know that there are probably some additional sections, and this is really helpful in helping me get organized for the bigger project. So if I know my introduction, if my topic is, I'm going to talk about the impact of cycling on the economy in college towns, I should probably talk about how much, and these are just notes to me, how often and how much do people ride bikes in college towns? What is the ratio of cars to bikes? What amount of money is spent on cycling? Are there bike lanes in that college town? What is the impact of those? Do they slow down traffic? All of those things could be part of my paper. Also, what does the Chamber of... We're talking about the economy in that area, right? So does the Chamber of Commerce have any comments or thoughts? And so I might even talk to somebody at the Chamber of Commerce and see how they feel about cycling in the community. Now, I know where I am right now, Auburn, Alabama, is a bike-friendly. They say they're a bike-friendly community. They're not very friendly, but there are bike lanes pretty much everywhere, and people cycle, especially in Auburn, on and around campus. There are bikes everywhere. You got to really watch out for those guys. And so the question is, are those people that are on bikes not driving cars? And would they pay for a car tag? And would they be buying gas and those types of things if they were not on a bike? And so that's how it would affect the local economy. And those are questions to answer in the introduction. My favorite question for the introduction is, who cares? Why is this a thing? Why would we even talk about it? What amount of money are we even talking about here? So you have to answer that question in your introduction. Who cares? And generally, you can answer that question with some type of statistic. If you can find some, really interesting or staggering statistic to include in your introduction, that gets your readers motivated to pay attention. So moving on, I don't want to dwell on the outline too much, but I think you can see where I'm going with this. This really is a way for you to get organized and to brainstorm the paper. And you see, I'm not paying attention to formatting. I really don't care about that. This is just for me to help myself brainstorm and get organized and sort of figure out all the different things I should talk about in my paper. And the other big benefit, it's a huge benefit to doing this, is now I can do my title page and then walk away. I know that I can't sit down and write 5 pages. I just can't do it. It'll never happen. But I can sit down and do a title page and then walk away, or go watch an episode of whatever it is on Netflix that I'm watching these days. I can do that and then come back and then maybe do an introduction and then save it and come back and work on it some more some other time. And so if I begin working on this in the beginning of the semester and I do a section a day or even a section a week, I can knock this out without a whole lot of drama for me. And that gives me some time to think about it and not stress over it, and probably do a much better job than if I just try to cram it all into one night. So I call this technique chunking. Maybe or maybe not that's the appropriate term for it, but that's what I call this technique, chunking the project into pieces that I can talk about, the cost, and I can talk about bike lanes and their impact, and I can talk about the Chamber of Commerce, and I can do that all in pieces instead of having to try to do that all in one sitting. So we talked about, oh, I lost my thing. We talked about topic selection, we talked about outlines, and then formatting. On formatting, I'll be honest, this is something that I really lean on Microsoft Word to help me with a lot. Also, I lean on Google to help with this a lot. I use APA, your instructor may use MLA. As we talked about last time, your instructor probably doesn't care as long as you stick with a format. MLA is a bit more widely used, and if that's new to you, you don't have to go and buy an APA guide or an MLA guide, and you don't have to be an expert in it. Just Google it. That's what we do now, right? If you go to Google and you just do a search for APA format, and you can read this, and this looks really helpful, but I always skip over here to the images because this is even more helpful, right? I can just click on this and go to view image here, and this tells me what should my paper look like. And if I make my paper look like this guy's paper, then it'll be correct. Now, you can't trust everything that you see on the internet, but you almost can, especially for this type of thing. This is worlds more helpful than some type of printed guide. And so go on to Google or some other source and find someone who has already done this. And if you were trying to give a citation for this or that, somebody has developed a guide on how to do that. And so don't stress too much over formatting. Just find somebody that's done it and do it like they did it. Now, you'll never hear your English instructor say that, but I can get away with it because it got me through graduate school, and it works fine. So formatting and format help, use Google as much as you want. And here's another trick. Once you get a page like you want, use it as a template. And so if we go into Microsoft Word, let's go and do another one. If we go into Microsoft Word, and I've got my fresh blank page here, and I remember that I know APA wants 12 points and they want Times New Roman. So I got to change that right away. They also want 1-inch margins. So if I go here to layout and margins, I want my normal 1-inch margins everywhere. And so what I've got the beginnings of here is a template. I've got my font, I've got my size, I've got my margins, and so I'm going to go and I'm going to save this. Let's just save this somewhere. I'm going to save it as writing template. And so every time I start writing a new paper, I'm going to go to my template because it's already got all of the formatting or some of the formatting correct. Now you can go as far as you like with this. You can go ahead and fill in your outline. I have my template that I really use actually already has a title page, and I just fill in the title. It's got a reference page and all of that other stuff, and that saves me about 10 steps. Every time I sit down to write something, I've got a good piece of it already done. So get a good template set, and then you can use that across multiple classes. And we've already looked a little bit at using Microsoft Word. If typing is not strength for you, I would encourage you to do these outlines and things on paper. If you can't brainstorm onto the computer fast enough, then scribble all of that stuff down and then write it or type it onto the computer later on. Using Microsoft Word and knowing how to make it do what it does is critical, and so we will perhaps do a whole separate video on how to make Microsoft Word do what it does. So I'm way over time. I hope that was helpful on getting started with topic selections and developing an outline. Stay tuned for other videos and let me know if I can help with something. Thanks.